rehearsal time anyway, but then you add that factor. So A, Liam and Jeff, how do you make that work? And B, Robbie, how do you as the director facilitate this so that there is a, so that the play is realized?
I mean, I'll just start real quick. Also, my microphone is a little off, so I'll be projecting now. Something that I thought would be a simple way is whenever Liam and Jeff spoke to each other as Nir and George, I would have them look in a certain direction, and that would kind of be like home base or almost rehearsal mode in the play. Of that's where we're at, you know. Whenever there was a character that would come in, I would have either the characters speak to the camera as if it's speaking to them, Nir and George, and that would kind of include the audience a little bit. I was able to give the audience a little bit of what the feeling in the scene is about. It's a little bit like when, you know, looking at people in the eye can be intimidating, you get to see a little bit more of them that you perhaps sometimes don't want to. So I wanted to give a little bit of that with the reading, and whenever we address the camera, or in moments that caused anxiety or caused worry for George and Nir in the story. There are a couple other moments when they would talk to their son. I would have them go this way, and constantly that's where the son always lived, to differentiate as much as we can. That's the tough thing about doing something on video, where we can't really shift upstage or stage right or stage left. We couldn't really do much of that. So we had to play with angles and the camera. But that's kind of what, and having them take that on was really, really great. So I think that really helped us distinguish where we are in the world.
Thanks. Liam and Jeff, any comments?
Yeah, I mean, I found it really, at first I was sad for all the things that we wouldn't be able to have in this production, sort of looking at it glass half empty, but then I ultimately was just, it felt like in a way, just a very intimate thing, because all we had was this small, you know, box, and you can see everything really close. It's like a, you know, close up in a movie, much more so than a play. And although we haven't met, I felt like we had a, you know, good chemistry, and it was just, you know, it was like a long distance, you know, Skype call or FaceTime or something, where we're having these intimate conversations. So it felt like the material actually really, in a way, worked for these strange circumstances.
I know for me, the text really did the work for me. I don't know if you experienced that too, Liam, but essentially, Robbie talked about this too. He was like, you know what, just be yourself, like react how you would react. And I think mixing that mindset with very personal text allowed me to connect with it and connect with Liam too. Like you said, I hadn't met Liam in person, but you know, once we got past that first rehearsal, I was like, me and Liam, you know, we got this. I'm like, I feel intimate with this person who I've like met through a screen, like, you know, so it really worked, I think. But that's just a testament to the text and just how personal it is, I think.
Yeah, I think that, sorry, Liam, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say that as a married gay man who's had some of these conversations, it was really interesting to see parallels and you know, sort of map these conversations onto my own life and see where we connect and diverge. But that it's interesting to see that no couple is alone in their search for what they want their future to be. So I definitely connected a lot with the text.
Yeah. So there are a few points in the piece where you as actors are both playing the same character, sort of swapping between the character. I feel like that's probably a little bit more challenging to do when you're not in the same room. So I was just wondering how you all sort of negotiated that side of things.
Well, go ahead.
Help was Michael. I'll let you guys respond more of this, but I think a lot of it was, you know, Michael helped us say, like, let's get a little bit of an audio thing to get the rhythm of how they're going to be paired together. So we rehearsed that. Like there's a moment where they were talking together, and then the son would respond, then together again, and the son, because like back and forth. So I think that was really helpful to just kind of go through it once. Let's get a recording of that, an audio recording of that, and then let's go ahead and film the scene. But how was it for you guys?
Yeah, I like the eye contact shifting. I felt like on stage I would have been able to make really interesting physical choices, and because I'm so, we're so constrained to these cameras and these rooms where we live, it felt false to do anything theatrical with it. So it was helpful to just know that Nier was over here and that we were having this conversation. And then every time I looked here, maybe I was the adoption specialist or the, school administrator. Um, so that made a big difference for me.
Yeah, same. It was a great choice to have, home base is here for acting with Liam, and then a character is here. And I also know that us kind of planning beforehand what the voices would be, I think we knew that like the surrogate mother would have a certain tone, just like a lighter tone. And then I think the teacher would have a British accent. There were like little choices that we made that actually made it fairly easy to drop into. I hope it really played for anyone who watched it, but I think it worked out.
Yeah, I think it's so hard with we've talked in a couple of the other talkbacks about these readings about how like, Zoom very much limits the tools you have, and any show where you're sort of swapping between characters because of the fact that like you've lost the tool of your pretty much your entire body, right? You've lost the resources of design elements that can support those transitions. But I thought it was very clear actually, and I think that's a real accomplishment because that can be very hard.
I think that's the thing that's also that as readings continue, or other readings that I do or that we all do, there's something about coming back to, it's really our face and our eyes that really are to tell the story when we come into film. That if we trust that the story will come through. And I think that totally happened with both of you, Jeff and Liam, when I saw the play. It was really great to just see you speak through your eyes and speak through the emotion that was happening in such short amount of time of rehearsal too. So
yeah. So I want to bring Kristen into the conversation a little bit. I think sometimes when I think of dramaturgy for modern plays, it can be a little bit, especially the play's already developed, it's not a new writing dramaturgical role. So I wanted to ask you to share a little bit about like what kind of research you did to support the play, and if there's anything that stood out to you in your research.
Yeah, so because this is a play based off of the real life experiences of two people, that was definitely a new experience for me. So I did a little bit of research into both of you, both George and Nier, and also the theater company that you did. The research that I sent out specifically to the cast was like about surrogacy in the UK and adoption in the UK, and then we talked about, when we got to the voguing section initially in rehearsal, that Robbie wanted to add in like, voguing movements a la Madonna. Yeah. So I think that was the most fun for me, was being able to say, oh, okay, this was something that we need in rehearsal that actors can like actually use. And so I was able to like go onto YouTube and find like some really great examples of like 80s and 90s style voguing, but then also like a really great TED talk of a guy who really broke it down in like how voguing tells a story and all of this stuff. So and then like send that to the cast so that they could have some real life examples of what this looks like, other than me saying just watch Pose on Netflix. So it was people who were actually a part of ballroom culture and and know what that is, explaining to the actors. So I think that was my like most fun moment dramaturgically. Yeah.
Were there any like cultural things you were sort of bridging or helping translate, or like Britishisms versus Americanisms?
That's mostly what my glossary is, and I sent that out ahead of time. I know that we had Claire, Robbie, and I had a bit of a discussion about like the difference between Oxford Goldsmiths and then I can not remember what the other thing is, Royal Holloway, yeah. And like what those three very different schools mean in terms of like the child that would come out of all three of those educations. So a lot of my preliminary research was like kind of the Britishisms of the play, and like that this term that we might use is not the term that we would use in the United States, but like this is what it means specifically in this context. So, and like this is a British pseudocreme is a British brand, and this is what that is in terms of baby items, but also nappies.
Really interesting in the plays we do, there's these things that we like take for granted that like, well, of course it means the same thing in the UK as it does here, and that's not always the case. And then there's things that obviously have very specific connotations or reference, but I think pseudocreme has come up in at least 2 of the readings so far. We're talking about babies a lot. Yeah, and I always think it's a very interesting thing to sort of be that translator for the actors and the director, but then there's the second part of like, what then do you need to translate for the audience if they're gonna like, if they miss it, if you don't understand what pseudocreme is, you're probably okay to understand the whole story, right? But then there's other subtleties in there that you might want to translate. And so I really encourage everyone to check out Kristen's very awesome dramaturgical website, which we have the link for in the chat. So
it's very, very impressive that you created a website especially for this. I just had a look.
Thank
I can't believe it.
It's great, isn't it? She did gorgeous
work.
work.
You've done your research. That's fantastic.
Yeah. It's mobile optimized too. So.
Yeah, and I really recommend people go check out some of the like primary accounts you found on like Vogue Culture. It's really cool stuff, and I think if people only know it through Madonna, which is awesome, but there's this whole other background to it that really is worth getting to know. So we've got, I know Robbie's going to be disappearing in about 2 minutes off the chat. So if Robbie disappears, everyone, that's where he's going.
Like this.
He'll just be like, bye. But we do have 2 questions from the audience. So I wanted to share those with you all. So the first one is from Timothy. Hi, Timothy. And it says, 2 questions that concerned my wife and I when we were thinking of having children. We're a straight couple. What if our economic circumstances deteriorated drastically? This was several recessions ago, he says. And who would take care of our kids if we both died? And he says he was interested if those were sort of parts of your conversations, Mira and George, in developing the piece as well.
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. Hi, Timothy. Thanks for your question. I think primarily we were overwhelmed with just how much there is in this subject, and there are many different routes that we could have taken. And in the end, we had to make some choices. And we did that, and it meant that some areas, I guess, couldn't be covered. But and I think we did that because we ended up. I think for me personally, I wanted to focus in specifically what it was like from the perspective of a gay couple, I suppose, and to bring that to light, because I feel that for me at least, is the area that I knew least about when I started the process, and that I wanted audiences to know about. So I think what you bring up is incredibly valid and important, and I think there could be a whole play that deals just with that. But yeah, that's why, I mean, from my perspective, why we made that choice. Yeah.
I think it's really interesting because obviously it's such a tremendously important conversation to have, and I'm struck that we didn't really have that much. And it came to mind, I'm really not an expert of the social support mechanism in the States, but I wonder whether it's a difference in terms of the reality of that. Even if you have 0 income in the UK, your child will have food in general. You would be supported. And if you die, there is a whole care system, I'm sure in the US as well. But like, I'm just trying to suggest that perhaps we are better served here socially, like in this way, but please correct me if I'm wrong. So I'm wondering whether these are those things that are less on our mind, being in the privileged position of living in something that is more socially, in my perspective, a bit more socially switched on, maybe.
No, you're correct. I mean, there is a foster care system within the US as well, but there is a stronger social safety net in the UK as a whole, from a healthcare point of view, from, subsidized housing, things like that. It is a more comprehensive and wide-reaching program in the UK, definitely. But yeah, that's a good point, that it might not be as forefront in your concerns if there is more of that social safety net in place.
Yeah, you would basically get tax benefit for every child that you'd have, for example, I believe. And if you're out of work, you would get unemployment for quite a substantial amount of time, etc. So I think in these ways there are more provisions, perhaps. I don't know.
Yeah, no, there definitely are. We have another question from Kevin. Hi, Kevin. Why is the play called No Kids? The ending felt open-ended to me, but is that the conclusion you/the characters reach? Ooh, that one's an intense one.
Go ahead, George.
Yeah. That's a really good question again. I think we saw the title in two ways. One, in that, yes, there are no kids at the start of this play. Will there be any at the end? And a bit like our life, really. And also, as a question, even though we didn't put the question mark on there. So I think all of that was a kind of a floating meaning, as it were. Yeah, I don't know. Sorry, I'm waffling a little bit, but I think that for me was where it was going. And at the same time, in terms of a conclusion for us, we're still in the process. I think the process of making No Kids for me, there was a realization that, oh, this is a creative process. This isn't my life. Because we got to the end of the play and I felt this incredible pressure for us to make a decision. And then at some point I remember realizing, oh God, it's just a play. I don't need to make a decision in real life just yet. I can take more time. So when we realized that, we had this divide between making dramaturgical decisions, in our creative process, and realizing that, okay, we've still got more of a journey to go on in our real life, and we do want to have kids, and we're in the process of trying to make that happen at the moment.
When did you when did you perform this play?
When was it now?
We opened it in the Edinburgh Festival in August 2018.
Okay.
And then we toured it quite widely around the UK, and then we took it to New Haven, actually. And then we went to Hong Kong quite randomly. And yeah.
That's awesome. Okay, I wasn't sure how much time had passed since sort of completing the play and today. So, yeah. So we have one more question, and this is sort of includes Robbie, and he has left. So I don't know if Liam and Jeff, you can speak to this. If you can't, we're good. But Pat asks, usually for Inishnu productions, the actors will take on the accent of the character wherever they're from. She says, was it the director's decision in this production not to have Liam and Jeff use accents when playing the characters, but then you did sometimes when you're playing characters within the play, like the surrogate? I don't know if you have.
I think it was Robbie's decision, and I was a little sad about that too, because I've had such fun in past Inishnua shows working with our great dialect coach Len, and just, that's another way to sort of inhabit a character and have it feel really real and transportative to somewhere else other than my reality. But I think it was just due to limited time and resources, and the fact that we're all separated by our computers, as far as I know. So I think he just said, let's keep it real and let's just speak as ourselves, and that'll be the truest way to do it in the circumstances we're in. Does that seem right, Jeff?
Yeah, exactly what I was going to say. We toyed with during that first rehearsal, do you remember? But then Robbie was like, you know what, we have limited rehearsal time. We want it to just be you guys. So for this production, we won't use accents.
Yeah, we
I would like to do them too.
Yeah. We have a dialect coach who comes on for our larger productions, but usually for readings, we don't have a dialect coach. And I will say that at least once a year, I get a sort of frantic email from an actor who's doing a reading being like, do I have to do an accent? It's only 5 hours of rehearsal. And I'm always like, Yeah, sorry, you'll be fine. It'll be great. We'll just make it work. So I totally get, it's 5 hours of rehearsal wanting to kind of make sure the story gets the priority. Because yeah, I can only imagine, I'm not an actor, but 5 hours with a script that you are still learning and with a dialect on top of that, that's a lot. Yeah. So I'm gonna wrap up, but does anyone have anything else they wanted to chime in on before we finish up?
Just to say thank you so much. It was an absolute pleasure, and I feel really honoured that you chose no kids and decided to do a reading. Thank you.
Yeah, we were thrilled that you both were supportive of this, especially as it being such a personal play and that it could be part of this collection of stories. And yeah, thank you also for joining us. The one silver lining in all of the craziness of coronavirus is that for each of these talkbacks, we've been able to have the playwrights join us, which is, we wouldn't have been able to do if we were in a theater. I just wanted to say before we do this, we all go away, that we have one more reading in our reading series. If anyone is interested in checking it out, it is still free. There will be a talkback with the player afterwards. It's called Made in India by Satinder Chauhan, and it looks at international surrogacy, which is a really interesting subject and one that I don't know if people know a lot about. So I really, really recommend you check that out November 11th through 14th. And then the talkback is on the 15th after it. So thank you all so much for joining us. There's one other thing I was supposed to say. I just got a reminder that part of this reading is we were encouraging folks to donate to the Attic Youth Center. It is a youth-focused LGBTQ community center with a lot of programs based in Center City, and a big part of what they do is trying to decrease the sense of isolation and stigma for LGBTQ youth. So if you have a moment and can send a little love their way, the link is, Jess can send it, but it is atticyouthcenter.org. I want to say, I'm really sorry, I don't have it in front of me, but please support Attic Youth. And if you need more information, please reach out to Initiative and we'll be happy to direct you there. So thank you all so much and have a lovely day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Good seeing everyone.
Thanks, bye.